Well, hello there, YouTube. So this is the third layer for this Rembrandt master study. If you want to see how this painting began, please check the previous two uploads on my YouTube channel. So today is going to be kind of short. It's just going to be working in some of the mid-tone range of this painting. So this is definitely dry. It's thoroughly dry. So I always recommend that you check the dryness with a palette knife, such as the one that I have on hand right now. All you do is just run the palette knife across, see if anything lifts off, and if it does, then that means it's not thoroughly dry. So since it's thoroughly dry and it's been sitting for a while, some of the colors have sunken in. So what I'm going to do to alleviate that is I'm going to oil out a little bit. Now I don't recommend that you do this every time, but once in a while, so once every 3 layers or so, or whatever you feel really, just don't do it all the time. You can oil out using a mixture of cold pressed linseed oil and spike lavender. So that is what I have in this little tube here. So you're going to need cold pressed linseed oil mixed with spike lavender or whichever solvent you want. So for example, if you have Gamsol, then just use Gamsol instead of spike lavender. So yep, cold pressed linseed oil mixed with a solvent, about a 50-50 mix. So a couple drops. And next thing we're going to do is get the sponge. And I'm just adding extra oil. Now it's not 100% oil because the painting is not going to be completed today. If I am to complete the painting on that day, then I could probably just get away with using mostly linseed oil, though I would still prefer to use a little bit of solvent just so that it's not straight linseed oil. You could also do this with something like walnut oil if you want to, though of course walnut oil takes a long time. A sponge is nice because the sponge, now don't be deceived, this is actually not from today. This is stained from a previous painting. So anyway, the sponge is nice because it evenly distributes the oil. I know I'm blocking the camera there a little bit, but it's nice. Now, so what I'm going to do is add some more subtlety to the painting. Hey Monster Gaming, welcome to the stream. So the colors are already pre-mixed, and again, if you want to know exactly what colors I'm using, please see the description box of this video, but there's not that many, so I should be able to tell you exactly what I'm doing in a second here, or what colors I have. So this one right here is lead white. So this is actually lead white number 2, which is the Rublev walnut oil lead white, which dries a little bit more slowly. This is Blue Ridge Yellow Ochre, which is just whichever yellow ochre, basically it's just yellow ochre. And then the red that I have is Old Holland Cadmium Red Deep. And then for black we have just a standard, which is German Vine Black from Rublev, but you could also opt for something like Ivory Black. It's basically going to handle the same. In terms of the premixtures, I'm going to explain the premixtures a little bit here. So the top part of the premixtures, so the top row, though it's a little difficult to see, these are the local color mixtures, and these are the premixtures that you want to have to match some part of the skin tone. So for example, if I pick this up and hold it right by the screen there, you can see them with a little more clarity. So this is the light local color, the darker local color, really dark local color. This is pretty much close to shadow, and then this is even darker than that, and then even darker. These are the orangey variations to the local skin tone. I usually have about 4, but I just have 2 of them per side right now. So this is an orangey mix, which is the red and the yellow, of course, to make the orangey color, and then some of the other colors in between. So this is the pinkish. These are the pinkish mixtures, the greenish mixtures, the bluish mixtures. So I'm going to take from those. Oh, and this is Venetian Medium from Rublev. So I'm going to take from those, and I'm going to continue to edit the painting and make it closer and closer to the original. No, the brand that I use is, I just have a mix between Rublev and Old Holland. But Winsor Newton, it would work just fine. You don't have to have the brands that I have. As long as you have the colors, it should work just fine. So now that I've oiled it out, I've found many spots already that definitely need some attention. And so you're zoomed in for today. It's zoomed in on the face, and it's gonna stay at this angle so that I can continue to basically hone in on the subtlety. So I'm going in one spot at a time. Now you see that I'm going from the one of the middle tones from the local values, local colors that is, and now I'm tinting it with a greenish color. Now if I want it to get a little bit darker, just quickly go into a darker variation. And this is going to be easy does it, easy goes kind of layer to this painting. By the way, the Rembrandt that I did last time, I finally actually finished this morning. So whenever anyone is curious about what a finished Rembrandt study that I completed would look like, I'll show it to you. I'd say this one might need about 2 more days. So today and then maybe the next time. Not sure. It depends on how much I can get done. Hey, Russ James. And of course, for those of you watching this live, this will be available for you to watch as a pre-recorded video. Though if you are watching this live, please feel free to ask any art-related questions. As long as it's related to oil painting, please feel free to ask. So see, now I'm going in all of these little pieces of paint that I missed last time. The objective is not to perfectly copy the Rembrandt. The objective here is to observe visual information and create a painting study. All kinds of subtlety going on there. And I'm experimenting a little bit with my streaming setup, so it should in theory actually be even higher quality. I did a little trick there with the camera, so hopefully this reads well. Now what I'm trying to do is not replicate the orangey, the yellowness of the painting. This painting to me appears to have a lot of yellowing with age, so instead I'm just trying to keep it closer to what I believe the original skin complexion would have been, rather than chasing the old varnish. So now I've just switched brushes, and just a little edge like that, you know, it takes a certain touch. Both parts of this edge, this one and this one, have to be wet in order for this transition to look somewhat believable. And now even the plane change for the glabella is going to need much more definition than before. So though this painting was started in an alla prima style, I tend to start that way, painting wet on wet. I eventually pushed that start into a much more cohesive, classical looking painting. So it looks like we got some questions here. Mohammed asks, "What do you think of Ilya Repin? If you know him?" Yeah, I've heard of him. I'd say, you know, his artworks are fantastic. I'd say, really solid painter. Hey, Infected Skills, how do you get glare while filming? Or how do you not get glare while filming? Good question. These are trade secrets. No, I'm just kidding. So this is art related to a sense in that I do consider film to be a form of art. So how to not get glare? So what you want to do, your camera, granted your camera is at an angle if you're filming, make sure that the light is at the same angle but more acute. So basically I have the light at a maybe like a 20-degree angle going this way, so that the glare side of this painting is 20-degree angles on the other side. So if the camera were to be pointed this way, then there'd be a lot of glare, but since the camera is pointed this way, there's not as much glare. But good question, good question. So I'm making the shadow a little bit more of a warm brown, and I'm actually going into the contour of the shadow itself a little bit more. It has a little more of an arc. And now there's going to be more of a subtle plane change here. So this has to get ever so slightly darker. And now this part's going to blend out. And this is the patient stuff, and you have to be very careful not to overblend it. If you overblend it, it's going to look a little uncanny. Something like that is an edge that I would agree with. I think that this edge is now starting to work a little better. Hey, Infected Skills. Oh, no problem. I mean, glare is, trust me, glare is something that we always struggle with when it comes to photographing paintings. Speaking of photographing paintings, I'm going to show you now the finished Rembrandt from last time. So I finished it today. So look to this part of the screen. It should show up in about a second here. There it is. So that's the Rembrandt that I finished this morning actually and photographed it. So Infected Skills. The camera angle was kind of about the same, but you can actually see on the left side and a little bit on the right, there's still some glare. So I wasn't able to get all of the glare out entirely. You'd actually have to use an editing software to get all of the glare out definitively. But if you keep the camera or the light at an angle, fairly sharp angle, acute angle that is, it should have less of a glare. The last thing you want to do, however, though, is have a bunch of lights in the room. Only use that singular light source when you're photographing your artwork. And that Rembrandt that I just showed you, I haven't posted it to Instagram yet. I'll probably post it later today. And I have a little bit of a time schedule with today's stream. Later on today, I'll actually be painting one-on-one on Zoom with one of my students. So I'm going to try to get as much painting done here as I can. And so, walking my way over here, there's a bit of a overly sharpness to that edge here that's just kind of irking me. I don't really like it, so I'm gonna have to blend it a little bit. Hey, Mohammed. Oh, thank you. That one was started on YouTube, and I think it's got like 2 streams on YouTube. And then I spent, I think, about 2 more sittings, maybe 3. I think 3 more sittings on my own refining it even more. So I'm imagining that the original would not have had so much of that dark yellowish quality to it. Also bear in mind that the camera, even though I did set it up so that you can see more detail on the camera, I'm actually quite impressed with the way that it looks. It is not 100% like in real life. In real life it's not as contrasty as you're seeing on the camera. Though I will tell you my secret here with the camera. The reason you can see more detail, as I'm streaming with my Canon T7i, but I've actually set it to photography mode. But I'm streaming with photography mode instead of video mode. I think it actually works better. In case you you yourself are streaming painting videos or something, that's a piece of advice that might help you. Now even here there's more of a subtle pass underneath of the tear, not the tear duct, but the tear bag underneath here. Now having the advantage of painting wet over dry helps me out because I can see the layers underneath. And also having oiled it out in the beginning, it keeps the painting, it allows me to almost glaze effortlessly. In fact, I probably will use a dark orangey glaze over here. Maybe we'll throw a little bit of the green into it. Remember, a glaze is a semi-transparent application of oil paint. What you need to do is modify the paint so that it is thinner than out of the tube paint. But only do this when you have an adequate amount of layers on your painting. So this has 2 layers underneath plus the tone, plus the fact that this is oil primed linen. So this is definitely ready for these thin glazes. So see automatically that glaze tends to work really nicely. Hey Mohammed, do you use reference from print or computer? I always struggle with the reference. It depends really. I am using a printout actually right now. So I'm using this printout for my photo reference, but I would normally just look at a computer screen. But my wife works with a really high quality printer, so I thought might as well just use the printout that she gave me. Though the print did come out a little dark, so I'm a little cautious about that. Okay, so next I'm gonna walk my way around the features. So this is just way too sharp. It needs to have more of a nice rounding effect. So now we're gonna add in those middle tones. So when you glaze, you typically want to work a little bit darker and warmer, typically, but you could glaze the other way too. That glazing lighter is actually usually referred to as half pasting, which we might do some of that in a little bit. But typically, like you're seeing here, hopefully you can see that some of the layers underneath are showing through. And when you want to go lighter, work more opaque. Unless you want to use a half paste. And this is one of those beautiful aspects of old master paintings. The fact that they're not alla prima, the fact that they are layered, you can see the layers underneath really nicely, especially when if you click on the reference that I have linked for you for the original image of this painting, you can actually zoom into it and see all of the nice layers. Now there's a fine line between rounding and over rounding, so I have to be a little cautious with that. Now that was too red, so I'll go to the greenish mixture. And if you're not using pre-mixtures for your portraiture, stop what you're doing immediately and explore doing pre-mixtures for your skin tones. Trust me, I didn't really use pre-mixtures that much in the past, but ever since I started using pre-mixtures, it's just so much. The process it's not just a little bit easier, but it's also, I would say it has improved my painting using pre-mixtures, and it's something that I teach my students all the time. Okay, so right underneath the tear bag here, it's a little more orangey pink. Now the nose needs to be rounded, it's a little too much of a chop. The shadow underneath the nose should be a little darker too. Now that was taken right from the pre-mixture. It was a dark orangey reddish. I actually see that the wing of the nose lifts up a little bit more. Now is a good time to put that in there. A little bit of red, orangey red, reflected light. There we go. Now we're getting the nose, the bulb of the nose at least, to round a little more. No one has asked it yet, but usually I get the question of what's the point of doing these studies, these Rembrandt studies, and the point of this is that with each study, your painting just inherently improves each time that you do one of these master studies, and it's a big part of my online classes. In fact, we recently started an Artemisia Gentileschi project just a couple days ago, and it's such a useful learning tool that it's incredibly valuable to the student, and it really depends on who you want to learn from the most. Ask yourself, do you want to learn from Rembrandt? Do you want to learn from Caravaggio? Who do you want to learn from? I let my students choose. I let them have a vote on the master study that we would do. For example, we just finished the Zorn, Ender Zorn, not that long ago, and then they voted for Zorn that time, and this time they voted for Artemisia Gentileschi. So there's always something to learn there. And when you do your own original painting, it's in your mind. You memorize the beauty and the subtlety that you witness in the master studies. Remember, this entire thing has been constructed with the Zorn palette, the 4-color palette. And I don't consider it limited at all. As you see, I pre-mix my own range of colors with it. Okay, so now I'm gonna move to the facial hair, and it's way too gray for me, and you don't see all of it, but you can see some of it. in the photo reference, you can tell that it's not that blue. And I don't think that's the yellowing. I mean, sure, there's probably some yellowing there, but it shouldn't be quite that blue as the one that I have here. A little bit of Venetian Medium. I'm just gonna glaze it. And this is a full spectrum glaze. So I'm going over the entire thing. Oh, and that's kind of nice. Now obviously I'm gonna have to pick out some lights after doing that glaze, but it's much more believable now than the generic looking gray that I had before. Hey Marco, I had Rembrandt's dark and light palette, but the color faded. Interesting. I don't. So, if you're talking about the actual Rembrandt paintings, yes, they do fade. In particular, vermilion, which is the main red that they used, it has a tendency to be a little fugitive, I hear, depending on the environment that the painting is kept in. A lot of times, I think it's you can read it online, but I think it's the salts that come out of human sweat, I think, in the museums. I think you can find this with the description that Michael Harding has on his vermilion, that it was the salts from human skin that or from human sweat or whatever that would make the vermilion a little fugitive or fade out a little bit. Alright, so let's add a little bit of light. And change to the skin tone brush. I use the greenish. I'm going to make a mark and stand back. Remember, the important thing is to, if you can, remember to stand while you're painting. When I started this one, I actually was just sitting and painting, and I've made so many mistakes. And the last time I worked on this painting, which was like 2 weeks ago, if you recall, if you watched that stream, I had to completely move this eye or repaint it, or I think it was, I don't know, one of them I had to completely repaint. Alright, so that's starting to look more alive, more like the natural gray that you would find with the human hair. Before it was just too blue. We're gonna add more detail to the hair. Now the hairline edge is the most tricky. So make sure that both parts are wet, the color for the hair and the color for the forehead. Work them into each other. If you don't, it'll look a little bit unrealistic, unnatural, if the hairline is too sharp or too ambiguous. Remember, if you have any art related questions, please feel free to ask. Like I said, this stream is going to be a little bit shorter. So while I am here, just feel free to ask, as long as it's art related. Even if you think I've answered the question already, doesn't hurt to ask. Hey Sumekus, are you mixing with linseed oil? I used a 50-50 mix of linseed oil and solvent. So half of cold pressed linseed oil, half of spike lavender oil. I applied it to the whole painting in the start of this painting session to oil it out. What oiling out is just brings back the luminosity that the painting had when it was wet. So sometimes the surface that you're painting on will absorb too much of the oil and it'll start to fade in the darks, which is natural. I mean, it happens with all oil paintings really, until you varnish it, of course. So That's what I did first, but at this point on the palette, I'm not mixing with any extra linseed oil. I just used what was in that the oiling out mixture. But thank you for the question. Like I said, everyone, don't be afraid to ask questions as long as it's art related. I know that I'm a little more strict than I was before when it comes to the streams, but I'm very open to any art questions. If you're struggling with medium, if you're struggling with drawing, or if you're struggling with materials, or if you're interested in my classes and want to know more about that. Ingrid, no, this is not the last layer. This is probably the second to the last layer. I think the next one will be the last. Famous last words. So this will probably be the last one on YouTube. I think, just so it doesn't, the pace doesn't get too boring for everyone. But for example, Ingrid, I'm going to show you the painting that the Rembrandt from last time. It took me 2 to 3 more layers to finish, Ingrid, and everyone else watching. So look at the left corner of the screen. There's the Rembrandt from last time, and I finished it this morning. As you can tell, I tried not to have the yellowish look of the yellowed out varnish that you see in a lot of the a lot of the Rembrandt paintings. So I'm pretty sure that's close to his skin complexion, what it must have been before the yellowing of the varnish. But I can't really know. But that was, I believe, 3 more layers after the last one on YouTube. So the same thing might be said with this one. I'm gonna punch up the heat there a little bit. I try to find areas where I think that the painting just kind of disintegrated over time, and I'm pretty sure there would have been more heat here. I've seen in a lot of Rembrandts that corner usually has more heat. So basically everything here, Ingrid and everyone else watching, everything here is going to need to have much more subtlety. And this is just the beginning of that. But I won't stream all of it, just because I know it'll just put everyone to sleep. However, if you're interested in seeing this stuff in more detail, I can do that. Just doesn't seem to be what everyone wants to see. Edward. Oh, sorry, not Edward. I'm trying to look at I'm looking at the chat through my iPad, so Eduardo, I apologize for that. Yes, I'm using the Zorn palette. Yep, the Zorn palette for painting, for oil painting. That's what I'm doing. Asymmetrous. Yeah, this is the third one. I mean, if everyone's interested, I could just stream the next layer for this one. Whether it'll be next week or the week after that, I don't know. So when you're painting lighter, make sure to work a little thicker. Now I'm increasing the thickness of the paint. All these little intricacies. And one of the nice things is, though I haven't gotten there yet, but eventually I get to a point in the painting where I don't know what to do, where I don't see changes that need to be made, and that's when the learning really happens, when you're doing these master studies. There's a little bit of a halftone there that I wanted to capture. For example, this edge is too ambiguous. Now I can add more structure to that. Hey Helen, is turpentine like spike lavender? Could you use that? Yeah, you could. It's just a solvent. Spike lavender is the one I use because it was used historically, so back in the old days, like 17th century and stuff. But it's also less toxic to have in the air than turpentine. It's less toxic to have in the air than pretty much any of the other solvents. I don't use it to clean my brushes or anything. I still use Gamsol. But you can use turpentine if you prefer to use that. I know a lot of painters that still use turpentine. I used it for a while. Just make sure to have plenty of ventilation when you use it. Now that this edge has more specificity, you can see that this one is just too sharp, too much of a chop. And believe me, there's nothing more motivating and encouraging than getting stuck in a master study, not knowing what to do, and then all of a sudden having one of those like eureka moments. And you will carry that experience onto your own painting. And this is what I want to pass on to people with these streams, is the importance of these. And just follow my Instagram. You'll be able to see the difference between how I was painting before doing all these Rembrandt studies and how I'm painting now. It's definitely a difference. Hey Ian, I've read that Rembrandt did a grisaille using flake white, and he used the white to get an opaque texture and then glazed over that. Yes, that is true, but I don't think in all Rembrandts he did that. You can kind of see in some of the Rembrandts, not this one in particular, but in some of them you can actually see the tone of the canvas if you zoom into it. So that's one of the cases where Rembrandt did do that with one painting or many paintings. Sorry, he did do that with paintings, but not with all of them. Though I can't really know. I'd have to ask an art conservationist. But in order to get the texture, like the texture that we have here, we used PreMixtures. Hey Helen, you want to see the next layer of this? I mean, sure. If everyone would be interested in that, just comment or let me know if you do want to see the continuation of these, because the reason I cut off the last Rembrandt and finished it on my own, so you're seeing the finish of that one to the left. The reason I finished that on my own was because I didn't really think enough people were interested in it. I didn't think enough people wanted to see that. It can be kind of boring and tedious to most, so just let me know. Hey Lens, notice you're not using Venetian Medium as you were in the earlier video. Do you still like to use this product? Does it make your paintings look more like the old masters? So, I don't think it makes your paintings look more like the old masters. I think to get the paintings to look more like the old masters, it's more about drawing value and color and of course texture, which brings us to Venetian Medium. I have it here on the palette, so it's this little thingy right there, and I do like to use it. It's a thixotropic medium, just like any other gel-like medium, which means that it's pretty much solid until you add, until you press it with a brush. It's very solid, so it's like a jelly, just like Neo McGill. But I do like to use it. I did use it in the glaze for here, and then all of the grays. I am using it to glaze, and I do still like to use it very much. I just probably am not using it as much as I did last time. Hey Adam, let's see. I don't think I've seen that. So no, I'm not painting with lapis lazuli. I think that's what you mean with the blue. I would like to, but I pretty much have found that this is the best palette that I've ever used for skin tones, so I'm gonna stick with it. Alright, so let me see. I'm going to... Alright, so I was adjusting the edges here. Now this edge needs more specificity. When you're adjusting an edge, make sure the outside and the inside of that edge is wet. Just trying to quickly get this background color so I can push it into the hair. And even this edge needs to be more specific. Hey Adam, so this is art related in a way. So some movie called Incognito, the drama about counterfeiting of Rembrandt. Okay, cool. I didn't know about that. Now I have to look that up. Yeah, one of my friends actually told me on Tuesday we were painting together. He said to add a brownish, yellowish glaze over the thickness of the painting to get the yellow look of the varnish. I'm not entirely convinced that I want to do that. I don't want it to look yellowed out like the original. So I'm kind of guesstimating what I think the colors would have been like without the yellowing of the years. So I'm not going for an exact like copy of this. Okay, so that's a spot of detail that needs some work. And this is a detail brush that I like to use. This is a size 5 pure red Sable by Silver brush. So as you witnessed, this whole layer was all around the detail, just all around the painting. Next time, if I do stream this one next time, it'll be more fine-tuned focus. Hey Ingrid, how do you let the large, what? Oh yeah, I have left the large palette for the Zorn, yes. But only for skin tones. I don't use, for example, if I'm painting, say, a white dress with a gold copper lace, I will use lead tin yellow and maybe like orange ochre from Rublev. If I'm painting myself as a self-portrait holding a green brush that has a bright highlight on it, then I'll use like a phthalo green, and I'm giving you examples of paintings I'm currently working on. I will use other colors, just not for the skin tones. And the key to all of this is the premixtures. As you're seeing, I'm taking a lot just from the premixtures. Hey, Sweaty Palms. Oh, thank you. Adam Carter. Oh, thank you. I'm glad you like this. I'm a little worried of boring everyone too much with this level of detail, which is why I usually omit it. I usually don't stream it. And let me give you some advice on this this level of detail in the painting. Give yourself many sessions to do this. So don't enter the painting saying, today I'm gonna finish this painting. Don't do that to yourself. Because what you do is you automatically start by stressing yourself out. Now I understand if you have a deadline for a commission or something or a competition, then that's a different story. But for the sake of learning, don't enter the painting session telling yourself, today I'm going to finish this painting. Just don't do it. I've done that to myself before and it's stressful. So instead give yourself as much time as needed. And then eventually you're going to get to a point like I did this morning in the other Rembrandt study I was doing where you just knew the painting was complete. And in fact, for my online classes, I almost always do a first and second finish with the painting project. So the first finish would be the painting, I would call it finished. It would look finished to me, but I'll give myself an extra lesson or an extra stream, or stream an extra lesson where I'm able to do any touch-ups that need to be done. But painting on my own, I usually will not start a painting session telling myself, today I'm going to finish this painting. Just words of advice. Hey Ian, thank you. Sweaty Palms use Silver Brush. That's right, Silver Brush is my favorite. Remember, I'm not sponsored by any brand. I just really like to use Silver Brush. Hey Chili One. Oh, thank you. Thank you for your comment. And yeah, please check out my Instagram. I recently completed a figure painting. Of course, I can't show it here because it's a figure painting. I can't show it on YouTube, but I've been painting with my friends in Timonium, Maryland. So if you live in the Maryland area and you want to paint with me, every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. I'm at Zoll's Studio. Zoll's Studio of Fine Art in Timonium, Maryland. And we do figure paintings there, 3 sessions at a time. So if you go on my Instagram, you can see the paintings I've been doing there, the figure paintings. And it's a lot of influence from these Rembrandts. I'm rounding out the sclera. Now at this point in the streams, I'll usually take a break, but I have to end this one short because later today I have a Zoom one-on-one painting session with one of my students, so I have to make sure to take a break in between. Hey Michael, how many layers are you still going to paint? I'd say there's at least one more after this, but like I mentioned before, I won't enter the painting session with the intent on finishing the painting. It's always just building and building and building. But I would say approximately 1 or maybe 2, realistically maybe 2. I mean, if you look here, this is still kind of vaporous, kind of not quite specific, the facial hair, so that's going to need some attention. This is going to need some attention. It's too vague. I started getting into some of the form over here, so this is kind of like a glimpse of what I'm going to do the next layer, so you can kind of see the trajectory that I'm going in here. But always just give yourself as many layers as it takes. And now the forehead needs to match the skin complexion. So I'm gonna have to do a glaze. So let's use Venetian Medium. It's a little more orangey. I'm gonna be a little on the cautious side. I don't want to make it look yellowed like the original, so I'm doing this with great caution. Remember, I do a glaze and I just go right over it to pick out the lights. Ingrid, I love the simplicity of the Zorn palette. You are not boring this. Okay, good, good. I'm glad. The Zorn palette is just fantastic. I mean, I switch from time to time. Like I use lead white number 1, which is linseed, to start, and then afterwards I switch to lead white number 2, which is the walnut oil, and it's still lead white. It's still the same. It's still the same pigment. It's just the different oil that goes into it. And I use the lead white number 2 in the later stages because the drying time, it dries more slowly, and you want the later layers of your painting to dry more slowly, and you want the earlier layers to dry more quickly. Okay, so a few more adjustments and then we're gonna call it a day. And it seems like everyone wants to see the continuation of this. I was gonna just finish it on my own and then post it on Instagram, but we can continue this one. That leads me to another word of advice. When it comes to the subtlety in a painting like this, like I mentioned before, I know I've mentioned this before, but take it to a level where you don't know what to do. Get to a point in the master study where you're lost. You're totally lost, and you don't know how to move forward from there. And that's going to be an excellent place to encourage and stimulate learning. One thing I like to do near the end of a painting session, just to mess around with the impasto. So this is the pre-mixture that I had, and now I can add even more thickness over top of the glaze. Isn't that nice? Now, I don't think that the Rembrandt is as thick, but it is Rembrandt, so it could potentially be way thicker than this. But it's something I like to do. And I save my pre-mixtures, so these pre-mixtures were actually from earlier today, the previous Rembrandt that I was working on. And what you do with this impasto paint, this heavy paint, is just weave it until it has a nice texture that you like. This is always fun. Kind of like a sculptural aspect to painting. Oh, okay, sweaty palms. Yeah, I got the solution for you. If you want a replacement for lead white, I would suggest using a flake white replacement from Gamblin. So I'm going to show you it right now. So flake white replacement from Gamblin. I don't know if I can get the thing to focus on it, but yeah. Remember, I'm not sponsored by these brands. This is just because I want to give you the best information that I can. So flake white replacement by Gamblin is what I would recommend. And what you want to do with flake white replacement from Gamblin is you want to add a little bit of yellow ochre to it on your original pile. So for example, if I were to put the flake white replacement right here, so that's the flake white replacement. On its own, it is way too cold because it is pigment PW6, which is titanium dioxide. So it is titanium white, but it has the thickness of lead white. So for the sake of demonstration, let me see if you can see this. So this is the lead white that I have, which has some other paint in it, but you can see the thickness of it. Okay. So if you pick up the flake white replacement from Gamblin, you see this stringiness to it? See that? This is what you want to get that kind of thickness, the kind of impasto. But the problem with it is that it is titanium white, and titanium white is too cold, it's too blue for skin tones. So you want to tint it with yellow ochre, add a little bit of yellow ochre to it, and then make your pre-mixtures. A substitute for this one, for cadmiums, is kind of hard to find, but Winsor Newton does make a substitute. So if you go to Winsor Newton, they do have a cadmium red deep, cadmium free. So if you want to substitute for that, so if you substitute, if you get the lead and the cadmium out, then it's perfectly safe to use. Obviously, always use oil paints with caution. Hopefully that helps you. Hey Nikki. Oh, thank you. Don't worry, this is going to be available as a pre-recorded. And like I said, everyone, I'm doing these live streams, virtual painting sessions, without a fixed schedule. So basically, I'm doing these whenever I can. But I am on a fixed schedule with my online classes that I offer on Patreon. But with YouTube, it's a little hard for me to have a fixed schedule for streaming. So all I can say is that I will stream from time to time. Sweaty palms, can you add more transparent white to make it a little more transparent? I've never done that, so I can't say whether that's a good idea or not, but I don't think it would hurt. I don't think it would hurt. Chili one, can another color besides vermilion or cadmium be used? Yeah, cadmium. Winsor Newton came out with cadmium free, so Winsor Newton's cadmium free red deep. That's kind of weird to say. So their cadmium substitute for cadmium red deep, I think, is what I would suggest. And to use the Zoram palette efficiently, you want this red to be perfectly in the middle of red. So if you make this cadmium red light, it's going to be harder because it's already lighter. So that's the best advice I can give for that. Well, thanks, Nikki. Okay. All right. That being said, I think I've done enough with this to let it dry for now. Whoops, there goes the camera. So yeah, if you watch the pre-recorded video of this, hold on, I'm gonna do one more adjustment. Looks like there's a bruise on his head, so I gotta fix that. So if you watch the pre-recorded, so if you watch this after the stream again, please leave a comment. Let me know if you want to see the continuation of these, even though it's more slow paced like this. I could definitely do that. Next time I stream, I am thinking of just streaming the same thing, and I'm going to continue working on it. But then after that, I will continue these master studies because they are, in my opinion, really the best thing you can do to help you learn. Okay, good. That resolves that. So, yep. Any last questions? I'm using my iPad to communicate with you. I figured out how to get the comments on my iPad. Like I said, I gotta end this one short because I'm gonna be doing a one-on-one Zoom painting session with one of my students soon. Hey, Adam Carter, yep, sounds great. I gotta check out that movie on Rembrandt that you mentioned, or Rembrandt copies. I'm glad you like the live streams. Hey, Susan, I'm glad you like the live streams. I will continue to do them. I'm not gonna stop doing them. It's how many live streams on the same painting everyone wants to watch. So for example, the one that I showed you, so if you look at the left side, that's the one that I just finished this morning. So that one was started on YouTube. I did 2 streams on it, and then I think 3 more painting sessions on my own. So initially I was going to do that with this one, but if you want to see me continue to take it to a more finished level, like I did with this one, so this is the one that you saw the picture of. So if you want to see painting get that far, it may take a couple more streams, but if you want to see it, I can definitely do that. Hey, Nikki. Oh, thank you. Yeah, definitely. I hope that the videos will help you. Hey, Curtis. Well, yes, it does take a lot of patience for realism, but the good news is that patience is something that's always built upon. But I mean, all expressions of visual arts are definitely worth exploring, I'd say. Alright, so that looks like all the questions for now. That being said, remember everyone that I do not have a fixed schedule with these live streams. So basically I'm doing a public YouTube live stream whenever I can. But know that I will continue to do them. Nothing is going to change with that. It's just that sometimes I will finish a painting off camera. So this one, it seems like everyone wants to watch me complete this one. So next time we will continue to work on this one, like I said, basically whenever I can. But remember that the pre-recorded videos are there for you to be able to watch and to listen and to learn from and to draw and paint along with, as they are virtual painting sessions. If you are interested in taking your learning further with me, please check out my online classes on Patreon. That being said, I wish you all the very best in all of your artwork, and I'll see you on the next one.